gentlemen, I'm sorry if I kind of try and skip over this. I've never done anything like this before, spoken publicly like this, so it's a new experience for me as well as for yourselves. I want to welcome you all here to Galway. It's a fabulous city, make the most of it while you're here. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for bestowing such an honour on me. I feel the one who's honoured here today. Because I'm in such an esteemed and distinguished audience, and I feel very privileged to be here. I stand before you today not only as an advocate and a volunteer, but more importantly a survivor of rape and sexual assault. And I hope to give you more insight into what it's like to be a survivor and a victim. Some of you might wonder where the difference is in those two words, but there is a huge difference. Throughout my childhood, adolescence and early adulthood, I would have considered myself a victim. How you might ask? Well, the answer is simple. I let the things that happened to me define me. In the summer of 1985, I had just turned 15, and I had just finished my junior cert. I had mixed emotions at this time because a couple of years beforehand, my mother and father's marriage had broken up, and I would have loved to have shared that experience of my first state exam with my father, who had since gone to live abroad. So things weren't great at home. I had what I thought was a normal life and spent most of my time with my friends, most of whom were male due to the fact that I was such a tomboy, and I preferred the company of boys to girls as I found them more trustworthy. Little did I know that these so-called friends were to change my life forever. On that warm summer's day, I was gang raped by my friends, and I never told anyone at the time. I did try and tell on numerous occasions throughout the years. However, these disclosures were greeted with pity and with disbelief. I began to feel different, isolated, and very much alone. I felt I couldn't tell my mother or brother, as I did not think that they would have coped very well with it. And I didn't tell any of my friends, as I was afraid of being outcast by them. When I did tell someone, not long after it happened, I got abuse in return and was branded a liar, and so I let it go. But it was never fully gone. It was always there in the back of my mind. I went into a self-destruct mode. I felt worthless, ashamed, guilty, and very angry. I was angry at myself that I could have been so stupid. I felt guilty because I must have led them on. I must have given them some indication that I wanted this to happen. I felt rejected by everyone, and so I sought out attention in any form. I became the slut that people thought I was, or so I believed. I became more reckless and promiscuous. I started drinking, all to let myself believe I wasn't damaged goods. As I got older, I would sabotage any good relationship I had. I would hurt them before they could hurt me. And this continued for many years. I always felt I was never meant to be happy. And it was true that what they said, bad things happen to bad people. And so I deserved everything that had happened to me. And I blamed myself more than anyone else. I carried on with my life, not really knowing what I really wanted from it. I had my children, bought my house, got married, worked, but never truly felt I deserved any of it. And I waited for the next bad thing to happen, as inevitably it would. Every time something tragic happened, I was thrown back into an emotional turmoil of shame, guilt, and anger, and the hardest thing to overcome was shame. I felt I could be in a crowded room and still feel completely alone. And I began to feel suicidal. I felt everyone would be better off without me, and that they would be broken-hearted initially, but they would get over it in time. And that's how my mind worked. I had been through so much at this point, and I figured that there wasn't much else to throw at me. How wrong I was. I had survived being molested at the age of 6 by a family friend, the gang rape at 15, raped again by a youth leader at 16, my parents' marriage breaking up, and my father living abroad, my mother's numerous suicide attempts, and her suffering from what we now know as being bipolar, my mother's death in a house fire, my father's return, I know this sounds my husband's drink and drug problem and subsequent marriage breakdown, and my late husband's suicide, and a relationship with a man that left me with scars and bruises. During this last relationship, my father passed away from cancer, and strangely enough, it was his death that helped me find my strength. I ended the volatile relationship, and in that I confronted it head on. I apologised to my family for not being the best person that I could be, and I promised them I would be better. I began my journey to becoming a survivor, but something was still missing. A few months after my father's death, I was still quite fragile. However, I was slowly getting my life back. I met my now fiancé, and the love and support I received from him was phenomenal. I told him everything that had happened to me in the past, and instead of using it as a weapon against me, as my previous partner had done, he helped me and loved me even more. So when I saw a small ad in the local paper for volunteers at the local rape crisis centre, I knew I had to put my name forward. I talked it through with my family, and with their full support, I made the call to the wonderful Miriam Duffy at the Midwest Rape Crisis Centre in Limerick, where I was welcomed with open arms, and later in Carlow, South Leinster, by the lovely Anne Kerwin Finn. I now consider my colleagues in the RCNI as my family. While I was a volunteer with the Limerick branch, I trained as a SATU worker. And this made me, in that training, it made me understand the reasons why I did what I did after my own rape. The behaviours that I projected. I never had counselling as such after my rape, and now I wish I had. I'm not sure if I would have been a very different person, but I know I would not have been carrying around the shame and guilt for so long. I finally had my chance to let my voice be heard and to tell my story without fear. My journey of self-discovery and self-worth had begun. I met the most amazing and inspiring people during my training and heard their stories and how they came to this point in both Limerick and Carlow. While working as a SATU worker, I was called out to 3 forensic exams. I was so nervous and so afraid I would say and do anything wrong. But I also had faith in my own journey and my own experiences, and that they could help. I got my validation when the client and I were walking out the door of the hospital, and she turned to me and hugged me and said, "Thank you, I could not have done it without you." I told her there was no need for thanks, that I wanted to be there for her. And afterwards I got into my car and I cried. And they weren't sad tears, they were emotional tears, because I had finally realised that I was not a victim anymore, I was now a survivor. And with my experience, I could help others become the same. By helping victims become survivors, I rescued myself. And so when the opportunity to tell my story in the national press arose, I wanted to have as much impact as possible. My story was published in the Irish Times, written by the wonderful Roisin Ingle, in July of 2011. I asked that my picture and my name be published, and that the release coincided with announcements of government funding being cut. I had just moved with my family to County Kildare after 40 years living in Shannon in County Clare, and I knew my story would ruffle a few feathers. However, I was not prepared for the outpouring of support and love that I received from people I knew and people that I didn't know. And they thanked me for being so brave, and some told me of their survival stories. I felt humbled and honoured, which was alien to me, as all I felt in the past were unloved, unwanted and invisible. It took me 25 years to tell my story in full, and now it is out there for the world to see. I wanted to help and encourage people to come forward and tell their story, and hopefully enlighten and educate people enough that they would want to help too. I stand here before you today as an advocate, a volunteer, a survivor, and not a victim.